Welcome to Mayhem cedh, where questionable decks meet questionable pilots. For this week, we're jamming March of the Machine to see who the best commander is from the set. With that being said, let's check out the pod today. First, we have Evan on Heliod House of the Rising Sun, a control deck that seeks to stop early win attempts, land Heliod, and use him in conjunction with Wheels to power out an expensive win con. Jack on Slimefoot and Squee Fungus Among Us, a Jund deck that seeks to use Slimefoot and Squee's recursion to win with a Hulk line. Pilch on Shalai and Halar Crash Bazbo Lifeforce Bonanza, a Naya deck that seeks to slow down the table with stacks, land its commander, and win with one of many 2- and 3-card combos. And finally, Tanner on Thalia and the Gitrog Monster Frog Rider, an Abzan Hulk deck that seeks to lock down the table with hard stacks, accrue card advantage with its commander, and win with a Hulk line. And now, with each pilot in their respective corner of the screen, let us begin. And for those of you in the Ames area, stick around to find out how you can get 10% off your next Mayhem Ames purchase. Evan draws and plays an Arid Mesa, cracking it, paying a life, and fetching up a Tundra. He plays an Esper Sentinel and passes. Jack draws and puts an Overgrown Tomb into play untapped, paying 2 life. He follows it up with a Mana Crypt, not paying for Sentinel, Mox Diamond, discarding land as it enters, a Lotus Petal, and casts his commander, Slimefoot and Squee, creating a 1/1 Saproling when it enters. Off to the races, Jack passes. Pilch draws, plays a Command Tower, and a Lotus Petal, not paying for Sentinel.
Soulless Jailer.
No. Jack cries, and Pilch passes. Tanner draws, plays a Misty Rainforest, a Mox Diamond, not paying for Sentinel, discarding a land when it enters, and a Lotus Petal. With Evan feeling left out, Tanner follows it up with an Avacyn's Pilgrim and cracks his Misty, paying a life, fetching up a Bayou onto the battlefield. He plays a Findhorn Elves and passes. Evan draws, plays an Island, a Soul Ring, an Arcane Signet, and passes. At the beginning of his upkeep, Jack loses his Mana Crypt trigger. He draws when suddenly...
We have some very important business to tell you.
There was a raccoon.
There was a raccoon on the side of the building.
Like hanging.
Like there was
Yes, he had
like,
1000%.
he had no.
He
foothold.
was hanging there.
Let me see.
Foothold.
He was hanging.
Like
a oh my god!
Hey, there's a pizza on the roof.
Yeah,
you're gonna say we should.
There was a raccoon on the building.
Acting sus.
He was hanging.
Acting sus.
Jack follows up the Raccoon excitement with the Demonic Tutor, paying for Evan's Sentinel, fetching up a card into his hand, and moves to combat, taking Pilch with Slimefoot and Squee and a Saproling, creating a Saproling through SNS. Pilch blocks SNS with Jailer, takes the rest, and the turn moves to Pilch. Pilch draws, plays a Verdant Catacombs, and cracks it, paying a life and fetching up a Taiga into the battlefield. He plays a Drannith Magistrate and passes. Tanner draws, plays a Savannah, and at the end of turn, Evan flashes in a Fairy Mastermind. The turn moves to Evan. Evan draws, plays a Misty Rainforest, and passes. Jack draws, puts a Blood Crypt into play untapped, paying 2 life, and moves to combat, tagging Tanner with everything, creating a Saproling through SNS. Tanner takes the hit, and in his second main phase, Jack casts Natural Order, sacrificing a Saproling, not paying for Sentinel. In response, Evan casts Mana Drain, targeting Natural Order. In response, Jack casts Red Elemental Blast, targeting Mana Drain. In response, Evan hard casts Fierce Guardianship, countering Red Elemental Blast. Then, Mana Drain counters Natural Order, and the turn moves to Pilch. Pilch draws, plays Blind Obedience, not paying for Sentinel, and at the end of turn, Tanner casts Abrupt Decay, paying for Sentinel, destroying Drannith Magistrate. The turn moves to Tanner. Tanner draws and casts his commander, Thalia and the Gitrog Monster. In response, Evan cracks his Misty Rainforest, paying a life and fetching up a Hollowed Fountain onto the battlefield, untapped, paying 2 life. Thalia and the Gitrog Monster resolves, and the turn moves to Evan. Evan draws and adds 4 colorless through Mana Drain. He casts his commander, Heliod the Radiant Dawn, and pays 2 life to help transform him into Heliod the Warped Eclipse. With Draw Go Perfection assembled, Evan passes. Jack draws, plays a Luxury Suite, and moves to combat, taking Pilch with everything, creating a Saproling through SNS. Pilch blocks SNS with Jailer, takes the rest, and the turn moves to Pilch. Pilch draws, and passes. Tanner draws, plays a Polluted Delta, and moves to combat, taking Evan with Thalia and Gitrog, sacrificing Avacyn's Pilgrim, and drawing a card through Thalia and Gitrog, with Evan drawing a card through Mastermind. Evan takes the hit, and in his second main phase, Tanner plays a Bountiful Promenade, and at the end of turn, Evan casts Solve the Equation. In response, Pilch flashes in an Archivist of Ogma. In response, Tanner cracks Polluted Delta, paying a life and fetching up a Scrubland onto the battlefield. Archivist resolves, and with Solve the Equation still on the stack...
1 mana instant speed Gilded Drake. This is what you care of? You could have taken his commander! His commander!
Evan fetches up a Prosperity into his hand, and the turn moves to Evan.
Finally, card draw.
Yes!
I'm down.
Evan draws, plays an Iganjo, Seed of the Empire, and Prosperity, where X equals 2, with his opponents each drawing 2 and Evan drawing 5 through Mastermind.
Man, I should not have kept this.
3,
Really?
5.
It had so many just 2-drop good stacks.
Since you guys have drawn a combined total of 6 cards this turn,
You're supposed
Oh my god. So
6
everything
less.
seeks.
I would like to cast Approach of the Second Sun for a single white mana.
Okay.
You know,
Sure. I'm going to put
I'd
it.
like to respond.
Oh,
Thank you. In response to Approach of the Second Sun, Tanner casts Silence, not paying for Sentinel. Oh boy, here we go.
I'm going to play and then crack Memory Jar.
How does Memory Jar work again?
Each player is going to set their hand aside and draw 7 cards.
I would like to respond to Memory Jar.
Okay.
I would like to make a green off Elvish Spirit Guide.
Okay.
Then I'd like to cast a Veil of Summer.
I would like to respond to Veil of Summer.
Yeah, it's fair. It's fair.
Where does our hand go?
Also, no,
after
this
Memory
enters
Jar?
taps. You can't crack that.
Oh.
There's still a Veil Summer.
There's still Veil of Summer.
There's still a Veil of Summer. Time Spiral.
What?
Oh my
Instant Speed. Time Spiral.
Okay, I have a response to Time Spiral.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Is Silence still on the stack?
Yes.
Yeah.
And nothing has resolved.
Also, can I draw my card off?
Here,
I'm responding to
real
the draw
quick, real
trigger.
quick. Set up the stack.
Oh
just
my
like that.
Okay, we're gonna actually
Really
leave
quick,
the
Set up
stack.
the stack. 'cause
Okay,
it's getting weird.
It's this.
Bottom. Silence.
Veil of Summer.
No,
No,
then it's
Memory Jar.
Memory Jar.
Memory Jar.
Veil of Summer.
Time
Time
Spiral.
Worldly Tutor.
Yeah. So I'm gonna Worldly Tutor on top of that. I'm going to pay
Can I
for
draw a card?
Sentinel. No,
I'm gonna
this
re-
is in response to your trigger.
I'm gonna respond.
God damn it, Tanner!
Now this
is a
pod racing.
I'm gonna grab my look.
Yeah, he just
Is this op agent?
This is
There's a cord
Okay.
for 3.
okay.
Oh
okay,
no,
okay.
so it's op agent.
Cord on the stack. Priority.
He's going for op agent.
I will allow Court of Calm.
I have pass
Okay,
priority.
so this I pass priority. This will resolve.
Helion moment! Helion moment!
Alright, so with the stack war finally ending, Tanner fetches up an Archon of Emeria to the battlefield, Worldly Tutor resolves with Jack fetching up a Dualcaster Mage to the top of his library, and Time Spiral resolves with each player shuffling their hand and graveyard into their library and drawing 7. Okay,
Sounds much worse than
we
my
all
last
drew
game.
our 7? Okay,
Okay.
so Veil of Summer, you draw,
This resolves.
Veil of Summer resolves.
It ends up resolving, yes.
I draw a card.
Okay, then Memory Jar resolves.
Memory Jar resolves
Then
10.
Silence resolves.
You can't cast. Nobody can cast spells.
And then Approach of the Second Sun resolves. You gain your 7 life and shuffle and put it 7th from the top. The classic Approach of the Second Sun strategy, forgetting it's there and playing a fetch land. With the stack fully resolved, the turn finally moves to Jack. At the beginning of his upkeep, Jack loses his missed Mana Crypt trigger and wins his current Mana Crypt trigger. He draws, plays a Bayou, a Sylvan Library paying for Sentinel, and moves to combat, tagging Pilch with everything, creating a Saproling through SNS. Pilch blocks SNS with Jailer, takes the rest, and the turn moves to Pilch. Pilch draws, plays an Emergent Zone, and a Manglehorn. In response, Evan casts Frantic Search, drawing 2, discarding 2, and untapping 3 lands. Then, Manglehorn resolves, destroying Memory Jar. Pilch passes. Tanner draws, plays a Command Tower, a Windswept Teeth, and Timna the Weaver. He moves to combat, taking Pilch with Drake, Jack with Findhorn Elves, and Evan with TNG, sacrificing Bountiful Promenade and drawing a card through TNG, with Evan drawing through Mastermind. Evan blocks with Archivist, Jack and Pilch take the hits, and in his second main phase, Tanner pays 2 life and draws 2 through Timna. At the end of turn, Evan casts Snap, targeting Archon of Emeria. In response, I'm gonna saw in half Archon of Emeria. Listen, I know this is a big ask from the red deck, but please find a counterspell. Anybody find a counterspell.
You know what? I'll get right on it.
The turn moves to Evan. Evan draws, plays a Felwar Stone, and passes. At the beginning of his upkeep, Jack loses his Mana Crypt trigger. He draws 3 through Sylvan Library, keeping all 3, losing 8 life, with Evan drawing through Mastermind. He plays an Underground Stadium, an Ignoble Hierarch, and moves to combat, tagging Evan with everything, creating a Saproling through SNS. Evan blocks SNS with Heliod, which Jack sends to the graveyard. Evan takes the rest, and at the end of turn, Evan flashes in a defense grid. The turn moves to Pill. You know what? I think we've solved the how does blue-white win in cedh question.
It's Approach of the Second Sun!
Pilch draws, plays a Chrome Mox, not paying for Sentinel, imprinting Avacyn's Pilgrim, plays Survival of the Fittest, and moves to combat, tagging Evan with Gilded Drake. Evan takes the hit, and Pilch passes. Tanner draws, plays an Overgrown Tomb tapped, and moves to combat, tagging Jack and Evan with Archon of Emeria token copies. Both take the hits, and in his second main phase, Tanner draws 2 and loses 2 through Timna. He plays Collector Oof. In response, Pilch activates Survival, discarding Grand Abolisher, fetching up a Ranger Captain of Eos into his hand. Still in response, Evan casts Pull from Tomorrow, where X equals 3, drawing 3 and discarding a card. The turn moves to Evan. Evan draws, plays a Mana Confluence, and pays 2 life to cast Gataxian Probe, looking at Jack's hand and drawing. At the end of turn, and after Jack tried to cast Worldly Tutor through Defense Grid, Pilch activates Survival of Fittest, discarding Llanowar Elves, fetching up the Red Terror into his hand. The turn moves to Jack. Jack draws 3 through Sylvan Library and keeps 2, losing 4 life with Evan drawing through Mastermind. He plays a Scalding Tarn, Goblin Bombardment, not paying for Sentinel, and moves to combat, tagging Evan with 5 Saproling. Evan blocks 1 with Heliod, and before damage, Jack sacrifices the Saproling to Bombardment, dealing 1 to Soulless Jailer. Evan takes the hit, and in his second main phase, Jack sacrifices 3 more Saprolings to Goblin Bombardment, destroying Soulless Jailer. At the end of turn, Evan flashes and flashes back Echo of Eons. In response, Tanner cracks his Windswept Heath, paying life and fetching up a forest onto the battlefield. Then, all players shuffle their hands and graveyards into their libraries and draw 7 cards. The turn moves to Pilch. Pilch draws, plays a Sacred Foundry, and casts his commander, Shalayan Halar, and moves to combat, tagging Evan with Drake. Evan takes the hit, and at the end of turn, Tanner casts Horde of Calling, where X equals 1, paying for Evan's Sentinel, fetching up a Viscera Seer onto the battlefield.
I fucking hate blue-white control. All the combo decks go counterpoint, go.
Little, yo, go, little counterpoint, go.
The turn moves to Tanner. Tanner draws and casts Natural Order, sacrificing Findhorn Elves, not paying for Sentinel. After much deliberation, in response, Jack sacrifices Ignoble Hierarch in his last Saproling to destroy Collector Oof. Still in response, Evan casts an Offer You Can't Refuse, countering Natural Order and giving Tanner 2 treasure tokens. Win attempt thwarted, Tanner plays a Godless Shrine tapped and moves to combat, taking Jack with Tymna and Evan with Thalia and Gitrog. Both take the hits, and in his second main phase, Tanner draws 2 and loses 2 through Tymna. He plays an Arid Mesa and passes. Evan draws, plays an Ancient Tomb, and activates Fairy Mastermind, with each player drawing a card. He follows it up with Finale of Revelation, where X equals 4. In response, Jack casts Entomb, fetching up a Protean Hulk into his graveyard. Then, Evan draws 4, and the turn moves to Jack.
You have a literal demonic tutor in your hand, and you're just...
That's foreshadowing, by the way. Jack draws 3 and keeps 1 through Sylvan Library, with Evan drawing through Mastermind. He plays Cabal Therapy, targeting Evan, not paying for Sentinel, naming the blue demonic tutor, Muddle the Mixture. Evan reveals his hand and discards Muddle. He plays a Gaia's Cradle, and at the end of turn, Evan casts Snap, targeting an Archon of Emeria token. In response, Tanner sacrifices the token to Viscera Seer, scrying 1. Snap fizzles, and the turn moves to Pilch. Pilch draws, plays a Spectator Seeding, and...
So I'll cast this Red Terror I redrew.
With no responses, he moves to combat and attacks Jack with Shalayan Halar. Jack takes the hit.
So I'll deal combat damage to Jack.
Okay.
With a red permanent source, I put a 1/1 counter on here. Yeah, so then basically every time a counter gets put on here, I deal a damage, and whenever a damage gets done from a red source, a counter gets put on a permanent.
The table sees the writing on the wall, and Pilch wins the game. For those of you in the Ames area who stuck around, come to Mayhem Comics in Ames this week and ask for the YouTube discount. You'll be asked the question, who won? Answer correctly and get 10% off your purchase. Thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe to catch future videos, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day.